Hello and welcome back to a brand new Player 2 review discussion. My name is Paul James, and today to share our experiences with God of War Ragnarok, I'm joined by fellow deputy editor, Jess Emmett. How are you?
I am doing great after the absolute beast that was God of War.
You're
How are you
fresh.
doing?
You're
I
real
am
fresh.
fresh. I am fresh. I finished it this afternoon, so yeah, big time.
All exciting times. For the both of us, it's been a bit of a last minute surge to, I think you'd been kind of coasting along, enjoying a lot of the side content. For
Mm.
myself, as has been documented through other forms of Player 2 content, I was working on Gotham Knights. There's kind of a few other plates that I needed to kind of spin and deal with before this kind of rolled along. So I was dabbling at points, but then just had to go, all right, it's time to go and put that foot to the floor and 14-hour day and all sorts of rubbish with that. So our experiences, I guess, will differ from maybe what the general masses will be like, and even probably a lot of our reviewing contemporaries. But what are you thinking at that top level before we start to wade into things a bit more?
At the top level, I mean, it's definitely a game that I think had I had the choice, I would have wanted to space out a little. There's a lot to digest. Lot of gameplay stuff, a lot of narrative stuff. Like it's huge. I feel like the first one felt like a relatively contained sort of linear narrative thing. I don't know, it felt much shorter than this one.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, it was.
this yeah, this was big. I'm really still just processing. My brain is trying to wrap around the absolute mammoth that was this. But yeah.
Well, the time that it's taken for, and I'll use myself because I was far more. I need to
Mm.
mainline this bad boy initially,
Yeah.
and then try and get to the side stuff afterwards. Um, for me, that playthrough, I clocked in about 23, 24 hours, and God of War 2018 to
Mhm.
kind of 100%, it was a little over 30. So um, there is kind of a stark difference. I've even heard rumblings around the internet that like there was someone, I don't even remember what outlet, because they weren't in breaking embargoes or that sort of thing, but after about 70 hours, they still weren't done with all the content in it. So
Well,
I don't know if that was a bit of I've left the controller on the couch and dealt with little
yeah.
kids, or I don't know, I've delayed this, delay that, whatever, or they're, I don't know, dare I say it, bad at video games. But like, sorry, don't come after them, gamers.
No.
Um, but it sounds like there's plenty to wade through,
Yeah.
well beyond. And I
Yeah.
mean, we've both kind of touched a bit. You've touched more of the side stuff than I, but
Mm.
there does seem like a lot there, and it's all really valuable, meaningful stuff.
Yeah. I feel like it's really easy to just sort of pick stuff up along the way. So like there were some side quests that would come up and I would be like, "Ah, that's fine. I can deal with that later. There's pressing stuff to deal with now." And I would be really engrossed in the story. And then there was some stuff that would come up that I felt kind of like, "Ah, the story's natural progression, sorry,
Yep.
is actually to follow this side quest and to kind of close off this little bit before we move on to whatever the next thing's going to be." So like some of them I think were quite big without talking spoilers, which is going to be the
Yeah.
challenge of this discussion.
We'll
Um
have a dedicated spoiler cast in the future, and by saying this on recording, I've now guaranteed that it happens. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, some of them really felt like, okay, this character is going to help us, but in order for me to feel good about them helping us, I want to help them deal with
yeah,
this thing that they've got going on before they kind of join us and help us on our quest. So, um, yeah, I think I'm just over 30 hours at the moment, having done a lot of the side quests that I thought were like key ones, I guess. Um, Other ones that involved, really big tricky bosses or,
put them
like
on the back
yeah,
burner for now.
yeah. So I have by no means touched everything, but the story heavy ones I sort of went after.
No, I'm completely with you. And yeah, I kind of built. I was like making little notes of some of those sort of quests that you're talking about. The ones that did feel kind of natural, but I had to, even in my case, and that was just because I started to really have to mainline it later in the piece than you.
Mm.
Um, I did have to go. Okay, like this really feels like it fits, but I'm sorry, people, I gotta go. And just jump into that portal and off to the next
We
realm, or
go.
back to Sindri's house, or whatever the case happens to be. So,
Yeah, yeah.
um, I've ticked off a few of those since, and I'm enjoying doing that, and
Mm.
I'm looking forward to kind of immersing myself in those, and then completely ratcheting the difficulty down to deal with some of those bosses,
Oh
because there was
God.
one or two that there was one right near the end.
Mm.
What realm was it?
Mm-hmm.
Actually, no, I won't talk about the realm.
Mm.
But right near the end there, and this optional boss is literally right there. You turn left to go to the main objective. You turn right, and with like you're not having to go off a little walk where it's obscured, hidden there. It is right there in the path, and right to the point where your accompanying character acknowledges the fact that this thing is right there and is a tough boss. And I went and had a couple goes, like, nah. No.
No.
Like I thought, okay, I'll dabble with this side thing. This is going to be a nice challenge. No, this is bad news. I'm back to. Thank you for reminding me that I have a main priority that I need to address right now. One that is clearly far tougher than any Nordic gods I'm going to deal with. Let's go deal with that, and I'll come back to you at some other point. So, I have actually tried to do that since I've tried, and I don't know if it's a bug or if I'm just not doing it right. I've tried to flick the difficulty down post game now from give me balance, which is the standard, to I think it's give me story at the easiest one, to just go on monster one of those bosses, and I do it and it gives me the prompt to say, okay, do you confirm? And I get yes, and then I jump back in the game. It kind of reloads everything, puts me back to the checkpoint, and I look at the options and it says give me balance again. I'm like, I want the game easy, damn it. So I might have to
take pity on me. I
might just have to play the game again, choosing story from the beginning, but whatever. I know you're able to change, so it must be some weird little bug that's probably in the day one patch. Don't think anything of it, people. It's really a nothing sort of thing. I would never recommend playing on story to begin with. Like, play it the way the game's, or close to how the game's intended difficulty wise.
But that said,
the options are there.
Hard. It's a hard game. Like, I don't know if something just happened halfway through, but it felt like the first half was kind of okay difficulty wise, and I was like, I'm cruising. This is fine. And then all of a sudden, I was like, I'm dying all the time. I'm just constantly dying, and I don't know what changed. But
I know what it is, and I'm happy to go there for people. I'm not spoiling anything major. They introduce wyverns. Yeah. Those pricks near the end, like in that last third of the game, are just the worst.
Well, they are. They are
because they have worst. They kind of zigzag and then swoop at you, and it really feels. It feels like there's no rhyme or reason to when they kind of go. I think there is. I'm sure if I just sat there and acknowledged, all right, I'm just going to let it hit me and just watch the pattern, then I'm sure it's the same thing time and time again. But it really, like, they kind of glide around. They jump off the ground like, okay, so I know what's coming, but I can never pick the time right to dodge it. And they take such a huge chunk of your health away when they do. And they drop more and more of them at the end. So I feel like the moment they got introduced, that's when things went to the shit a little bit in terms of the difficulty. Not shit in terms of that's a bad thing, but like...
No, but God, my
ability to crush enemies depleted significantly at that point.
My purchase of resurrection stones just like way up.
Okay, I didn't get that far in the end. I didn't go near the resurrection stones. I just acknowledged... I copped the L and went again.
Look... I will acknowledge this sort of like brawler game is not usually my sort of genre.
Yeah.
And I step into it for God of War because I think the story is so good, and like particularly these newer ones, like it's a really powerful narrative. And it feels nice and fluid and good to play. But there are some bits where I'm just like, this requires finesse that I've just not built. I've just not dedicated time to building. Yeah.
What are you thinking? And we are going to keep this spoiler free. Again, we'll have a dedicated spoiler cast in the future, and the game isn't out yet, so we want to respect that for people. But at that kind of top level style thing, the story itself, what are you thinking? What sort of directions did it take you in emotionally? Again, without divulging necessarily the hows and whys it got you into that space, but did you really run the full emotional gambit like I think most of us maybe expected the game would do to some of us?
I did. I think that's something which I think is not really spoilery to talk about because it's something that happened a lot in the first game.
Yep.
Is that there's a real like respect, I guess, for nature, and sometimes that's hunting, and it's like the circle of life, and like throughout the story there's a lot of like people will die, whatever, sure, but there's a lot of like animals die, like just because they live in the forest and they're like go hunting and stuff. And I think it often gets me how emotional the way this series deals with that kind of is, I guess, in a way that other series really aren't. It's like really real and really beautiful and affecting. And I know it's kind of maybe silly to say because like, people also went on an emotional roller coaster in this game. Yeah. But like there are moments in this series, and it happened in the first one, and it happened again in the second one, where I'm just like, wow, it, yeah, I don't know, some really, really moving moments to do with like nature and life and respecting the whole
And
world, I
innocence.
guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that innocence one is kind of the real, like I think the real crux when it comes to Kratos. And you contrast Kratos from the early days, the Greek days, where
Mm,
it didn't matter who was in his way,
yeah.
and that obviously led to his spoilers. People for a game that's nearly 20 years old, led to his wife and daughter being slaughtered by at his own hand.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
and then you kind of fast track to 2018 and even Ragnarok,
Mm,
and there's this no like they're innocent. Let's not like we don't need to do this. Like we can find a
mm,
way to do this without sparing innocent people, without hurting innocent people, without hurting the wildlife. Do
mm,
we need to do this way?
yeah.
And that's really reflective of obviously the growth in Kratos and how much of that we kind of lay at the feet of having Faye and Atreus enter his lives.
Mm.
Sorry, his life, I should say.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I like to think it's fairly obvious that obviously he learnt so much for them, but then he carries on with that after Faye's death, obviously in 2018, and maybe spoilers for that one, but sorry, even
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
5 years old now.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know.
I feel,
I'm with you. It's really powerful stuff.
yeah. I'm interested. Well, again, we'll get into this in like the spoiler cast, but I think that you and I had a discussion earlier this year about the first one where you talked about how your feelings may or may not have changed about it since becoming a
Yeah,
dad and like
perspective. Yeah.
playing that. How was it playing this from that perspective?
So I didn't burst into tears like I
Okay.
know of a couple people who have, but like I felt close on a couple of occasions. I think there was I and again this maybe goes back to your point earlier about the nature of the kind of the way we've had to go through this is that I maybe didn't allow myself to because I was a little bit more go 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 go. But
Yeah.
there was a couple moments there where like I and just in ways that I couldn't have before I was a dad, kind of understand where Kratos was. I'm not trying to say that I was some big angry god killer, and then became a mellowed out dad.
Mm,
Um,
weird.
but look, I've killed a Greek god or two in my time, but
Yeah.
I didn't
Who
take
hasn't?
out Zeus. So
Well,
um,
why even
so
try?
yeah, we'll give it a crack. It's not too late, I
Yeah.
guess. Is it?
I don't know.
Um, yeah, there was a few moments along the way there that really kind of made me shrink back in the seat and kind of want to have a little mini cry for a moment, but then things kind of ramp up and you kind of the game kind of it doesn't rush you along. It's not ushering you through. Okay, here's the soppy moment now. Get back to killing things. They don't do
Mm,
anything like that. But there's this constant presence of the level of importance of what Kratos and Atreus are trying to achieve. That means that we've had this really heartfelt moment. I've certainly felt it. Like it's rocked me a
mm,
bit. But then it's all right. I've got to go back to stopping Ragnarok.
yeah.
Or it's
Yeah.
I guess it's weird and jarring in that sense, but they got the desired effect, and I think it almost reaffirms like the importance of what you're trying to achieve in that game, and kind
Mm,
of helps push you along that journey. So
yeah.
they did it really well, and yeah, I can certainly see a lot of people really not coping overly well with some of the moments they present, especially
Yeah.
towards the end.
Mm. I
But
think
we can't spoil that, so
no. For me, again, trying not to be spoilery, but the way the first one was really moving because it was just an incredible way of telling the story about that relationship between the father and son and all the stuff that you've just kind of said. And I think that bit naturally hits you more than it hit me because obviously I'm not a dad. I'm not a
yes.
like extremely angry man or a dad,
What?
you know?
Oh, okay.
Like
Right,
like
right.
like I'm not I can't really relate to Kratos because I share none of his traits realistically.
Yes,
Like
except the god killing thing that we discussed.
yeah,
a moment
obviously
ago.
the
Yeah,
god killing
yeah,
thing
yeah.
because who hasn't?
We've
But
we've all crushed Ares or
yeah.
Atreus. Sorry, Atreus, Ares or Zeus.
Atreus. Oof, different game. Talking about a very different
That's
game.
the God of War Smash Brothers game that'll come out in the future.
Yeah. But I think yeah, I think this game more than the first one, not to spoil any of them, but I think it did a really good job of showing a lot of different perspectives, on like the same situations. Um, and also doing a really good job of exploring relationships outside of the relationship they had with each other,
Yep.
because it was so key. It was the core part of that first game, and I think seeing where they take what they learned in that first game, not just like about, fighting or whatever. Atreus is obviously better at that now. He can hunt now, like he's a teen.
Yep.
Um, but seeing what they have learned about, yeah, emotionally from each other, psychologically from each other, like the world shifts that they kind of got at the first one, at the end of the first one, um, really feel like they affect how they navigate the second one and how they
Absolutely.
navigate their
Yeah.
relationships with other people in a way that I think is really clever.
Yeah, I think they nail a lot of that stuff incredibly well, and yeah, I guess the where I really connected with that relationship between those two specifically, and we'll try to avoid other characters because there are
Hmm.
like
Yes.
fascinating relationships between other characters that we
Yeah.
absolutely know.
Yeah.
Brock, Sindri, Mimir, Freya obviously has been shown through the trailers, and we obviously know where her head is at the beginning of the game.
Yeah.
Um, but how all these relationships grow is really, really fascinating and engaging, and certainly tugs at the heartstrings as well in a number of cases. But the one that I guess where it really kind of hit was some of these moments where what Atreus wanted to do, Atreus decisions where his heart lay on the thing, and how that would actually, without spoiling the nature of what those thoughts or desires or wants were, the way Kratos would like stop and listen, and he'd change his mind, or he'd take on board what Atreus was saying. He was learning from his own child, is something that I've learned a lot about just from my own 3-year-old kid. Sorry, 4-year-old kid now.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. You kind of consider like I'm the adult, so I need to make the decisions for it. But actually, like little 4-year-old kids still can really articulate what they want and why it's important, and connect at an emotional level to certain things that as an adult we don't typically do because we've kind of got this greater world experience and those sort of things. But you actually identify, no, this is important to the happiness of this little person.
Hmm.
I need to do this no matter what I feel about it.
Yeah.
And Kratos has a few moments like that, like, okay, this maybe is nothing, but like this needs to happen for the sake of this person who I'm trying to help grow and build and support and be the
Yeah.
best thing I can be for. And that's something that you wouldn't have seen from Kratos back in the day, of course, but you see building in the last game, and really really blossoms in this one.
Yeah. 100%.
You said before you're not a brawler person,
I'm
but of
not.
course God of War is that action adventure kind of brawly sort
Yeah.
of combat experience. And you
Mhm.
said it obviously gets hard at points, and it certainly does. And again, fuck those wyverns. But
Yeah.
what did you make of the actual playing experience, from the combat to the exploration to the world design, all those sorts of things?
I think that the combat, again, I don't even want to get too far into that because it's
Not the great,
expanded.
yeah,
I think.
yeah,
I think it's expanded in some cool ways. And some ways that really force slightly higher level of strategy that as it got harder towards the end, I could feel myself kind of getting used to it, and I was like, I suck at this right now, but it's because I'm not using XYZ that I could be
yeah.
using to help me in this battle. Um, and yeah, I think I felt that more than in the first, well, because there's stuff here that there isn't in the first one. But um yeah, the world is the same. The world doesn't feel bigger. That wouldn't be accurate to say. I think the world feels very much the same size as it did in the first one. You
Yeah.
just get to see more of it, I guess.
You get to see it in
Um
different ways and different lights as well, because Fimbulwinter
yeah,
has really changed the face of the environment.
true.
So you'll revisit locations that you've been to in the last game, but don't worry, people. It's not like the boat animation where it's just the same thing copied and pasted.
No.
It's like you revisit the same environment, but it's changed significantly. Obviously, just the layers of ice in Midgard have a huge impact on that. But even the way you interact with them, the tools that Kratos has got, the way that you use the blades, that it was kind of shown pre-release, but the way you use the blades as like a grapple hook of sorts, like a grappling tool, is really awesome in terms of world navigation and those sorts of things. Yes, there's the combat side, and they've certainly upped the ante there as well. Parry is so much more important in this one.
Yes. Yeah.
which took a while for me to embrace because parrying has obviously become huge thanks to Souls games in particular over the last decade, and I want nothing to do with any of that. But you've gone and put a bit of Souls in my God of War, and I now need to kind of embrace something I don't necessarily. And I started getting pretty decent towards the end there, but it's not of that same sort of level. Let's be crystal clear, people. This is not a Dark Souls, Bloodborne, Elden Ring style experience, but there's touches of it.
Yeah, they do have a setting. It's like an accessibility setting that allows you to turn down, particularly for like mini bosses, where you can turn on like mini boss assistance or whatever. So if you kind of are struggling, and I think it describes it as they're like impossible to get past. Like you're really, really struggling with beating this. It will kind of bring them back with less health or make them easier to defeat when you come
cool.
around.
I didn't notice that.
It talks about it being a tool to reduce mini boss fatigue, because obviously people were getting through the first one and being like it was super annoying to have to play the same mini boss over and over and over again. Yeah. So they've got that to make it slightly easier, but
that's very good. I didn't notice that. I guess I did just try and push through on as stock standard as I possibly could make it. But knowing that's there, I don't know. Do they count some of those side bosses as mini bosses? I hope they do, because
I don't know.
Bring them back with less health and put it on baby mode, and I'll definitely I'll definitely be taking them down. No, that's really cool. I like that.
Yeah. I think one thing we probably can talk, or that I would like to talk about at least, is that you said there's not long boat sections. There are like different ways of traversing the world now, because you do still go on a boat. But there's also sled sections, which are way more interesting, I think, than the boat sections. To me, anyway. I don't know. I think it's the use of the haptics in the PS5 controller. Yeah. The pulse is good. The like sound effects that they've chosen to put in that come out of the microphone in the controller. It's like a little tingling, I guess, of like the harness of the wolves, and it's I don't know, really satisfying. There were a couple of other moments in the game where they used that microphone in the controller in really creepy ways, and I was just like, this is objectively very clever, but I hate it so much.
Turn it off, stop doing it.
Yeah. But I really liked that, the like harness in the DualSense and the...
Yeah, they did some cool stuff there. And they're subtle things, because there's a lot of other ways that the DualSense you feel like, oh, maybe they've underutilized it a bit, but then it really sings in a few of those specific moments, so... All credit to Santa Monica there. They did some really cool things. We've obviously touched on the core gameplay. We've touched on the story as much as we're able to.
Yeah.
The world, I guess, again, we've touched on that too in a sense with kind of revisiting some of those previous locations, but some of the new ones that we go to, and I don't think we're spoiling anything too much to say. We go to places like Vanaheim. Obviously, there's like Asgard and the battle with the god. We're going after the gods. We're gonna go you're gonna see Asgard at points. Some of these locations look incredible. Some of these new places. Some of them touched by Fimbulwinter, others not. Others touched in ways that are less obvious, but they all look phenomenal. The design is fantastic. It's beautiful. It's a stunning game.
Some of the additions to the locations you've already been to, gorgeous. Like the way that Alfheim looks, it's gorgeous. Some of the effects on even just like the columns that you walk past, that's like a really subtle iridescent kind of reflective tint, and it's beautiful.
And yet, like, even some of the locations that are bloodied messes, thanks to some of the actions that have gone on, still look stunning. Now, as I mentioned, I think we talked about before the show. There's a few character models that look a little bit like maybe you're being held back just a tiny bit by the restrictions of the PS4 here, or maybe you didn't give them the TLC that perhaps one of the core cast would have gotten, which was a little bit of a shame in that sense. But they're minuscule things that really just throw away sort of comments there. But I guess they're noticed if you kind of line everyone up, you go, oh, those two or three, something's not quite right there.
Yeah.
But I'm sure they're an easy fix and thing. But the world, the characters, everything, like the attention to detail is so on point. Really, they've nailed it in that sense. It feels so good to kind of just consume visually, but also Bear McCreary's soundtrack.
Oh yeah.
which
It's
obviously so much laid in place from 2018, but holy
yeah.
shit.
Oh, God. Can definitely compose, that's for sure. Yeah, I mean the moments wouldn't be as moving and as emotional as they
Yeah.
are without that soundtrack. They wouldn't be.
But then there's
Um,
other moments where it disappears, and
yes.
there's the subtle moments as well that really work a treat too. So
Mm,
they've just like the from the soundtrack, but also the sound design sort of thing.
mm,
It's just the way they weave the music in and out, the various as you talk about, even subtle sound effects through the dual senses, all those like
yeah.
everything is just so meticulously crafted and then inserted into the experience to make sure it's eliciting the right sort of feelings from whether they're tactile sort of ones with the controller in the hand or sudden albeit creepy sometimes sounds through the control there or the soundtrack itself. It's all incredibly well
Mm.
done. The voice acting top tier once again.
Oh, yeah.
um
Amazing.
I I can't think of a poor performance in the or even
No.
a clear weak performance. Like everyone has been so well directed in terms of the delivery of their lines, and it's exceptional in that regard. I'm struggling to really fault the game in any significant ways.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
I obviously cited the character models there, and I believe it was in the kind of 1.0 version, like the actual final launch day patch, that there was a few bugs and stuff they were fixing up. There was some weird collision things early on.
Yeah.
I managed to walk through, like literally stand inside the body of another key character during a cutscene. Sorry,
Okay.
like during a sequence early on in the piece that I would suggest is not there anymore. By the time everyone gets their hands on it, probably not there anymore.
Yeah.
But there was some weird little collision things, and like they're all really tiny rough edges that they are the sort of things that you typically expect. That, oh, hang on, it's some like Kratos' axe is somehow slipping through his back a tiny bit in this weird little bit.
Yeah.
We'll just kind of fix up the edge there so like the collision is better.
Yeah.
They're tiny little things that all disappear very quickly, but I'm really nitpicking because I just can't find anything of substance to really critique the game for. They've nailed it. It was such a hard act to follow,
Yeah.
and yet
Mm.
I don't know. I'm struggling to pick fault.
Yeah.
I'm really struggling to pick fault.
Yeah. I mean, it's gonna take me like weeks to process how I feel about this game, but um, it feels long. There are points where I was like, okay, we're nearly done, and now we're not done, But it's hard to say how much of that is um kind of a consequence of I need to get this done in a short time period.
Yeah.
Like, would that matter if
Yeah,
I
the
could take as
mental
long
thing of
as
going,
I
I need to
wanted?
go and go and go. Yeah.
Yeah. I think if you play this and savor all of the beats as they're supposed to be savored and kind of just let it be a lengthy experience, then there's not much to fault.
No. Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. They've nailed it, I think, and I really look forward to. I don't know, even if it means I just have to play the PS4 version to, I don't know, to chase trophies because I'm a stupid, horrible person like that. But like, sit down and just replay that game and just do what you were doing for the majority of your experience, which is just go through it, explore at my own pace, go off and engage in this side thing, go and poke around corners, and geez, they like fill those little corners, those nooks and crannies up with some really fascinating things too that you just wouldn't expect. And then the exposition that comes from it. I really enjoyed one particular sequence where it wasn't even so much like you going off the beaten path. I think it was more Golden Path stuff, but you hear Kratos talking to another character and sharing a lot of his experiences from his Greek time and how that's kind of shaped him become who he is now. And it was fascinating to hear him open up like that. And you get little nuggets of that at various different opportunities off that Golden Path as well. It's really, really, really well delivered. It's not just Mimir exposing this time. It is a little bit of Kratos. It's a little bit of Atreus sharing how he's feeling. It's a little bit of Person X and Y and Z. Like, it's...
Yeah.
I love it. I love what they've done in that sense.
Yeah. It's way more well-rounded, I think.
Yeah. Which says a lot because 2018 was an incredibly well-rounded piece. They've done an amazing job. And congratulations to Santa Monica Studio for that. The team has done an amazing job. So
yeah, absolutely.
Everyone should be really, really looking forward to this game. It comes out Wednesday, November 9th. Jess, do you have any final thoughts at all before we wrap this one up?
No, look, I think I've said everything that I needed to say. It's beautiful, it's big, and yeah, I think it's going to
And it's
really make an
beautiful.
impact. Yeah, it is. It is beautiful. It's a beautiful game in so many different ways that word can be used.
Yeah, they've nailed it. So thank you everyone who has tuned in for this video, for this podcast. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe on the YouTube channel, on the Patch podcast feed. If you're looking for more review discussions, we've got a bunch of stuff coming up. You and Matt attended a play-on event today, as of when we record this, to talk about. So look for a conversation about all the various things that you saw and played and did at that event there. There'll be, I mean, it's that time of year, so there's going to be review discussions and a spoiler cast for this one coming up. Now, like I've announced that twice, so it's got to happen now. We can't avoid this one. No. There's some cool stuff, so please make sure to keep on the Player 2 website, on the YouTube channel, and the Patch podcast feed to make sure you're across all of the God of War and God knows what else, play on stuff that's all coming over the course of the next few weeks. It's going to be a really, really good time, a really, really busy time for us at Player 2.
Very.
Jess, thanks for coming aboard and having this conversation with me about God of War. Where should people go if they want to reach out and see what you're up to?
You can find me on Twitter. I'm at ZametJess, and on Play 2 is where all my written stuff is. Should be a bunch more of that coming up soon. So
yeah. Play on stuff, other games that you're working on.
Yep.
NDAs, everybody. We'll talk about it in due course.
Yeah.
Paul James Games for myself, Player 2 AU for the website. Please make sure to check out the website. The review of God of War Ragnarok that I've written is live on the Player 2 website right now to go and check out, and hopefully my words do this game justice because it is phenomenal. Thank you to Sony Santa Monica. Thank you to PlayStation providing us code for so that we could actually play the game, to fuel this conversation, to fuel this review, to fuel the Player 2 plays that you'll inevitably see once we're allowed to kind of spoil even the lightest of things. But otherwise, thank you all very, very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.